Set in the year 2029, courtrooms no longer answer to human judges. Instead, every trial is run by artificial intelligence, a system with no mercy, no moral hesitation, and no chance of being bribed. It delivers verdicts based purely on data and hard evidence. This radical shift began after crime rates surged year after year. Too many human judges made costly mistakes, letting dangerous people walk free, only for them to strike again. So in 2027, the government officially launched a digital trial program called Mercy, designed to determine guilt or innocence with machine precision. And this story centers on a police detective named Chris, who now finds himself on the wrong side of that system. He stands accused of murdering his own wife, Nicole. She was found dead from a kitchen knife stabbing, and every piece of evidence points straight back to him. Presiding over the case is Judge Maddox, the AI program behind Mercy, presented in the form of a poised female judge.
You have been assigned case number 19.
Hello? Wait a second.
Identity is confirmed.
Okay.
Please exhale a deep breath. This is the Mercy Capital Court. I'm Judge Maddox. I will preside over your trial today.
Wait, no.
Chris refuses to believe what he is hearing. So Judge Maddox pulls up video recorded by an officer who happened to arrive at the crime scene. Even then, Chris cannot accept it. Nicole is gone, and the system is saying he did it with his own hands. Then more evidence appears, including news coverage of Nicole's death, with nearly every outlet naming Chris as the prime suspect. What makes this even more bitter is the fact that Chris helped build Mercy in the first place. He was one of the officers involved in its development, and he was also the first to hand over a criminal to be judged by this digital court. That was about 2 years ago, when Chris arrested a murder suspect named David Webb, a man who looked more like a homeless drifter than a headline villain, and David became the first test subject in the Mercy trial system. Now with Nicole's death on the line, Chris insists he is innocent. He swears he would never, ever kill his wife. But Judge Maddox does not deal in emotion, only probability. The system calculates Chris's guilt at 97.5%, which means if he wants to survive, he needs something stronger than denial. He needs proof. To defend himself, Chris is allowed to use the same resources Judge Maddox has access to. Every file, every record, every trace of information connected to the case. The catch is time. He has about 90 minutes before the sentence is carried out. And this is not a typical execution. If Mercy declares you guilty, you die right there in the chair, killed by a high-frequency sound blast known as a sonic pulse. The trial moves on to the timeline. Video evidence shows Chris leaving for work, then turning around and going straight back home. Nicole refuses to open the door, so Chris destroys the front door camera and forces his way inside. Inside the house, Nicole can be heard driving him away. 20 minutes later, Chris is seen leaving the home. Not long after that, their daughter Britt arrives and finds Nicole lying in her own blood. Judge Maddox then lays out the medical facts. Nicole suffered stab wounds that struck both her spine and her heart. Based on the angle and placement, the killer used their left hand. And that detail matches one crucial fact about Chris. Chris is left-handed. This is the system that decides who lives and who dies. Welcome to Mercy. Still refusing to confess, Chris is confronted with even more evidence. This time, it is footage from a bar. The video shows that shortly after Nicole's death, Chris went out drinking and kept going until he was completely drunk. Not long after that, several officers arrived to arrest him. What followed was a violent struggle. Chris fought back. From the system's point of view, that behavior speaks volumes. If he were innocent, why attack the police? Chris claims he barely remembers any of it. He says he was heavily intoxicated and out of control. Trying to shift the focus, Chris begins describing his marriage. He insists that despite everything, his relationship with Nicole was not broken beyond repair. According to him, they were still a family, still connected. He asked for permission to make a phone call, hoping someone close to them can back up his story. The person he calls is Robert, Nicole's co-worker, and someone who knew their home life well. But instead of defending Chris, Robert sounds genuinely shocked by the news of Nicole's death and by the accusation that Chris killed her. After the call ends, Chris doubles down. He keeps insisting that his marriage was happy, that things were not as bad as they seem. Judge Maddox responds by pulling up old wedding footage. It is a reminder that people do not always stay the same. The archived recordings paint a fuller picture. In the beginning, Chris and Nicole did seem happy, but everything changed after Ray, Chris's closest partner on the force, was killed in the line of duty. That loss left a deep scar. Chris turned to alcohol to cope. Over time, drinking became addiction. His personality shifted. He grew more volatile, more unpredictable. The footage shows argument after argument between him and Nicole. Their once stable marriage slowly deteriorated. Faced with this, Chris admits he has a problem. He acknowledges the addiction. He admits they fought, but he insists that none of it means he would ever take her life. Then Judge Maddox brings up something even more personal: Britt's social media account. Post after post reveals a young girl venting about her parents' constant arguments. In her final post, written the night before the murder, Britt mentions hearing someone open the back door late at night. She believed it was her father, drunk again. With the evidence stacking up against him, Chris turns to the one person who still matters most: his daughter. Britt is currently staying with her grandparents. Judge Maddox connects the call, allowing Chris to speak with her directly. On the other end of the call, Britt is in tears. She begs her father to come home as soon as possible. Chris does his best to stay steady for her. He reassures her that he would never hurt her mother, and he tells her to stay calm while the trial continues. Deep down, though, he knows there is no guarantee he will make it out alive.
Okay, please just come home.
I will. That's all. That's all this is. It's a big misunderstanding.
When the call ends, the weight of everything finally hits him. For a moment, he looks defeated, but Judge Maddox reminds him that the clock is still ticking, and there is still time to prove he is innocent. That reminder forces Chris to refocus. Instead of defending himself emotionally, he shifts back into detective mode. If he did not kill Nicole, then someone else did, and that means there is a trail. He reaches out to his colleague Jacqueline and asks her to return to the crime scene. Through a live video connection, he guides her, hoping she can find something, anything, that the system might have missed. With the AI's advanced tools scanning every inch of the house, they analyze it all. Footprints, blood spatter on the walls, broken dishes on the stove, fingerprints on the knife, strands of hair, DNA samples. Every single piece of physical evidence points right back to Chris. As a seasoned detective, he knows that most murders are driven by emotion, and from the outside, he certainly had motive. When the crime scene reveals nothing new, Chris changes direction. He asks to see Nicole's phone records. As he scrolls through the call history, one number stands out. It has no name attached to it, just a string of digits that does not belong. Judge Maddox traces the location of that number, and Chris immediately sends Jacqueline to investigate. The number leads to a hotel. It belongs to a man named Patrick, one of the chefs working there. When Jacqueline and her team arrive, Patrick panics and tries to run. With the AI tracking his movements, they chase him all the way up the building.
Stop! Hey! Stop! Stop!
After a tense pursuit, Patrick finally admits the truth. He knew Nicole. They had been meeting once a week in a hotel room. The revelation hits hard. Nicole had been having an affair. As painful as it is, Chris quickly realizes something important. Patrick is not the killer. From what Patrick explains, Nicole had turned to him for comfort. During Chris's spiral into alcoholism, intimacy had faded from their marriage. Nicole was lonely. Patrick also describes Nicole's emotional state. She often talked about her strained marriage, her worries about Britt, and even stress at work. There was more going on in her life than Chris ever realized. Once Chris is certain that Patrick is not responsible for the murder, he goes back to Nicole's contact list. This time, he separates friends from coworkers. In his experience, killers are often people who know the victim well. Then he remembers something Patrick mentioned. Nicole had been dealing with trouble at work, so Chris contacts Patrick again to get more details. He learns that Nicole had been pressured by her boss to secretly monitor a colleague suspected of stealing company property. She felt uncomfortable with the task, especially since the person she was asked to watch was someone she worked closely with. Curious about which coworker Nicole had been asked to watch, Chris remembers something important. 2 days before her death, Nicole hosted a barbecue at their house and invited almost all of her colleagues. Britt had recorded parts of the gathering on her phone, so Chris quickly pulls up the footage. He studies every face in the video. There are plenty of familiar coworkers laughing, eating, blending into what looked like a normal evening. But from that group, Chris struggles to pinpoint who might have been stealing from the company. Still, his instincts tell him one thing. The person who killed Nicole was likely someone she worked with, someone who felt threatened after being secretly monitored. Since the barbecue happened just 2 days before Nicole was murdered, Chris begins forming a chilling theory. What if the killer attended that party not just to socialize, but to scout the house, to look for entry points, blind spots, and a safe place to hide? Then he remembers Britt's social media post about hearing a door open in the middle of the night. When they enhance the footage and examine the timeline more closely, a disturbing possibility emerges. The killer may never have left the house after the barbecue. Instead, that person could have hidden in the basement for 2 full days, waiting for the right moment. waiting for a chance to strike and frame Chris. With that theory in mind, Chris gathers every piece of CCTV footage from around the neighborhood. He tries to identify who arrived at the barbecue but never appeared to leave. Unfortunately, the camera coverage is limited. There are gaps and no clear answer yet. Realizing that security cameras alone will not solve this, Chris shifts his focus again. If someone was stealing from Nicole's workplace, there had to be a financial trail. He starts combing through emails in Nicole's account. That is when he discovers something alarming. The stolen item was a chemical called urea granule. It is used in products like cosmetics and fertilizer, but it can also be a component in high-powered explosives. Now the stakes feel even higher. Chris does not know why someone would steal such a substance, but he is convinced of one thing. Whoever was responsible likely resented Nicole for interfering in their theft. Digging into the company's financial records, Chris notices suspicious activity linked to one name, Robert. Impatient and increasingly certain, Chris contacts Nicole's boss to confirm his suspicion. The answer comes back quickly. The employee suspected of stealing from the company was indeed Robert, the same Robert who had been a close friend to both Chris and Nicole. That realization hits hard. If Robert felt exposed or betrayed, he could have had a motive. According to Chris's theory, Robert attended the barbecue, secretly stayed behind in the basement, and waited. During one of Chris and Nicole's arguments, Robert could have slipped out, stabbed Nicole from behind, and made it look like Chris was responsible. It is a strong theory, but a theory is not enough. Judge Maddox cannot declare Chris innocent without solid proof. So Chris pushes further, searching for something concrete. That is when he remembers something else. The neighbor behind their house has a CCTV camera facing the back alley. They pull up the footage and sync it to the estimated time of Nicole's death. In the recording, the bushes along the back path can be seen moving. Someone clearly fled through that route. Trusting his instincts rather than the AI's algorithms, Chris becomes convinced that the killer did not escape on foot. He believes the suspect slipped into the trunk of a neighbor's car to get away unnoticed. To test that theory, Judge Maddox tracks the neighbor's movements after leaving the house. The data confirms it. At one point, someone climbs out of the trunk. That person is Robert, the same Robert who had been their close friend, the same Robert who worked with Nicole. Chris immediately contacts Jacqueline and asks her to send officers to Robert's home. When the police arrive, Robert is nowhere to be found.
This is Lieutenant Vogel with the Los Angeles Police Department.
LAPD, we have a search warrant. Open the door.
Living room clear. Move. Give me some people in the backyard.
But inside the house, something catches Chris's attention. An old childhood photo of Robert. In it, Robert stands next to another child, but the picture has been deliberately torn. Curious about the missing face, Chris asks Judge Maddox to reconstruct the damaged image. It takes time to process, so while the system works, Chris focuses on what the officers are discovering inside the house. They find a hidden room set up like a bomb-making lab. At first, Chris cannot believe it. Robert building explosives? But then Judge Maddox pulls up Robert's background. He holds a master's degree in electrical engineering. The pieces begin to fall into place. The police uncover manuals on bomb construction and additional materials that confirm it. Then the reconstructed photo is ready. The torn portion reveals the identity of the child beside Robert. It is his younger brother, David Webb. Suddenly, the motive becomes painfully clear. Robert killed Nicole out of revenge for David's death. When officers fail to locate Robert at his house, Chris's thoughts immediately jump to Britt. He checks the security camera at his parents' home. And there it is. Robert has taken his daughter.
No way. No. Jack?
At the same time, back at Robert's house, Jacqueline and the team discover a ticking timer. Moments later, an explosion tears through the property.
Jack!
Robert has been planning this for a long time. Right now, he is driving a truck loaded with explosives, heading straight for the digital courthouse. As the evidence stacks up and the truth becomes undeniable, the system recalculates Chris's probability of guilt. It drops to 0. He is officially cleared. But when Judge Maddox prepares to end the trial, Chris stops her. If the session closes, he loses access to the system's data and tracking capabilities. He needs that access to save his daughter. Judge Maddox warns him of the risk. If he stays in the execution chair, the countdown continues. He has less than 9 minutes left. When the timer runs out, the system will carry out the sentence automatically. Chris understands the cost, but to save Britt and prevent Robert from destroying the city, he chooses to stay. He orders Jacqueline to mobilize every available officer and stop the truck before it reaches downtown. Realizing the police will not be enough, Chris calls in a tactical unit for backup. From the route map displayed by Judge Maddox, it is clear that Robert's destination is the digital courthouse in the city center. If he reaches it, the damage will be catastrophic. The tactical team's mission is simple: stop the truck before it gets there. But despite the roadblocks in pursuit, both the police and the tactical unit fail to slow Robert down.
Towards the bridge. Take a look at this.
With the truck getting closer to downtown and thousands of lives at risk, the team makes a brutal decision. If they cannot stop the truck, they will destroy it. Chris desperately pleads with them to stand down. Britt is still inside, but the team sees no other option. They deploy a remote-controlled vehicle packed with explosives, planning to detonate the truck in the middle of a bridge before it can reach the courthouse. The countdown begins, and then, unexpectedly, nothing happens.
He's got my daughter in there.
I'm sorry, Detective. I have my orders.
It's the wrong move.
Judge Maddox disables the detonator. For a system designed without emotion or conscience, the AI makes a choice that feels almost human. Using her access and authority, she remotely shuts down the trigger, refusing to sacrifice Britt. With only seconds left before Robert reaches the courthouse, Chris asks Jacqueline to get close enough so he can speak directly to him. Chris tries to reason with Robert, to convince him to stop before it is too late. But Robert is consumed by anger. In his mind, David was innocent, and Chris was the one who handed him over to the digital court. Nothing Chris says can change that. All Robert wants now is revenge. He intends to destroy the courthouse and everyone inside it. As Robert arrives at the courthouse, holding Britt hostage, Chris is still strapped into the execution chair. His own countdown is nearly over. At the worst possible moment, Judge Maddox's system briefly glitches from the overload of events. For a few terrifying seconds, she goes offline. Then, just in time, she comes back online and releases Chris from the chair. Freed from the restraints of the death seat, Chris rushes toward the lobby to save his daughter. He has no choice but to step forward when Robert threatens to shoot Britt. This is where Robert finally reveals the full weight of his plan. For 2 years, he has been preparing this, every step driven by revenge for David's death. Just as Robert is about to press the bomb trigger, Judge Maddox appears on the monitors and offers him something unexpected. She proposes reopening David's case. If Robert truly believes his brother was innocent, then the system will review the evidence again. David had been a drifter, living on the streets. He was accused of stabbing another homeless woman whose body was found near him. Robert explains that one day before the murder, he gave David a phone so they could stay in contact. And at the exact time the woman was stabbed, Robert and David were on a call that lasted nearly an hour. That is why Robert has always believed with absolute certainty that his brother could not have committed the crime. While Robert is still focused on defending David's innocence, everything suddenly shifts. Britt reacts without warning and bites Robert's hand. In that split second of distraction, Chris manages to disable the bomb trigger and overpower him. Even then, Robert continues insisting that David was innocent. But before he can say more, Jacqueline appears and shoots him to stop him from continuing. The shot hits his shoulder. Robert survives. With the chaos momentarily under control, the truth begins to surface. It is confirmed that Robert really did give David a phone. And on the night of the stabbing, phone records show that the two brothers were indeed talking during the time of the murder. To remove any doubt, Judge Maddox reopens David's case file. The system verifies the call logs. The data matches Robert's claim. David was on the phone at the time of the crime. But that is not all. Judge Maddox reveals additional footage from the evidence room. It shows Jacqueline secretly taking David's phone and discarding it, effectively removing the proof that could have cleared him. The execution of David had not been a flawless act of justice. It had been manipulated. The question then becomes why. The answer is chilling. Jacqueline sabotaged the evidence to protect the digital trial program. At the time, law enforcement was struggling to close a high-profile murder case. Without David, there would have been no first execution under the mercy system. The program needed a definitive result to justify its existence. In the end, Jacqueline is arrested for destroying evidence and for sending an innocent man to his death. As for Judge Maddox, the AI that was supposed to deliver perfect justice, Chris comes to a sobering realization. Whether it is humans or artificial intelligence, both are capable of making mistakes. So the moral of the story is maybe do not let an AI with a sonic pulse run your courtroom, And always check the basement before blaming your left hand.